Now that we understand the value of modeling, we know we are getting a ready-made architecture plus cross-mapping matrix, and we understand the two meta models in a little more detail. Let's home in on the tools we use to do the modeling. Then we will look at some definitions of objects and relations for our case study. Then we'll describe the case study. ARCHI for Business Architecture Modeling. Before we go into the follow the mouse session, let's highlight parts of the tool on this slide. You'll see the file is called bizbockexample.archimate. This is an XML file. It comes in your downloads. To the left is a folder structure that holds all the objects you model. The top level folder structure comes with the tool. I've created subfolders named after the 5 cross-mapping viewpoints we use in the rest of the course. I'll show you these in the follow the mouse session. I encourage you to take your time and get familiar with the tool. One of the folders is called Views. It holds the artifacts that we will use for cross-mapping. I have numbered them so it's easier to navigate. They are in the order of the presentations that we will go through during the course. You'll notice I've put in number 6 to illustrate added information mappings. In the middle is the drawing surface where the modeling is done. Then to the right are all the objects available under Archimate. Notice the blue and green objects. This is where the Archimate meta model extends into operational components like applications and technology. They are not pictured in the drawing here, but we will use them under the 5th view called Resources to Applications and Technology. Now let's move into our follow the mouse session. ARCHI for Business Architecture Modeling. Follow the mouse session. Welcome to this follow the mouse session. Before we get into what we're going to cover, let's have a look at doing the download for the ARCHI tool on screen now. So you literally go into your browser, type in www.archimatetool.com, and you're presented with this page. Archimate Modeling. So it's an open source modeling tool. It comes, you literally hit the download button. And these are all of the things that we're going to go through. So it's literally that simple. We'll use this as our dashboard along with an Excel file to be able to do our analysis. So I ask, hit that and download the tool. And then the CSV files and the exports and the imports and everything, they'll start to work for you. Now, once you've downloaded it, here it is. So what you see on screen is the Archimate tool. And what we're going to do is cover the folder structure, drawings and views, properties, relationships, visualizer, objects, hints, palettes, and an export. So we're going to go through all of those different parts inside this tool. First things first, you'll notice that I've highlighted this BizBock example. This is the example that you have in your downloads. It's called bizbockexample.archimate. You'll also see down here, it's named BizBock Example and bizbockexample.archimate. Okay, so let's talk about the folder structure. So what you'll see is when you do the initial download and then you go File, New Model, you'll be presented with a folder structure. Strategy, Business, Application, Technology, Motivation, Implementation. Now when it comes to BizBock, Strategy and Business, and a few of the implementation and motivational nodes, those are what the BizBock meta model covers. So you'll see here what I've done is I've created underneath the strategy node, obviously there's the capabilities, there's resources, and there's value streams. Those are the different objects that we talked about in the BizBock, also under the Archimate meta model. You'll also notice I've created folders that are numbered. So 0 meaning this meta model. Okay. And you'll also notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are all in relation to our presentations. So as we go through, these are our 5 valuable viewpoints. You'll notice I've opened each one of these 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and where we were using a view, these are called views, and there are objects on a view, say the Business Architecture Meta Model, those objects that you'll see on the palette, on the drawing surface, this is what this is called, the drawing surface. This is called the palette. You'll see those objects. Okay, and as we get into more detail, as we go through our case study, you'll see that I have number 3, which is this one. We'll be looking at the organization in the case study. We'll also be looking at objects, business objects. We'll also be looking at applications in our resource mapping. This is one of the ones in our punchline, basically, where we start to look at the concerns and address one of those key concerns. And you'll also notice relations. Okay, so relations 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've added a couple more, 6 and 7. 5 was where we stopped. These are for added info. Now, hey presto, underneath this node are all of the relations that are showing up on this meta model. And you'll notice that this meta model maps to the BizBock meta model. Okay, so we have our little folder structure. All right, so the key point is the views are numbered, so it's easy to follow along. Under each folder, whereas a piece of notation was used, a folder number was used, and then we had the relations folder. Okay, now let's go into drawings or views. All right, so these are your drawings. This is your palette, okay? And these are your views. All right, so these are the drawings as per each one. And you'll notice these as we go through the course. You'll notice that each one of these is an artifact that we concentrate on, and we also do some analysis on. Okay, let's just stick to this one. Now I want to do a little bit of a tour of this little meta model. So this is where all the important mapping gets done. What I mean? Well, mapping between ARCHI and BizBock. You'll notice that if we move to the bottom of the screen, there is a properties panel. So I click on principal, there's a properties panel. And on our main menu, drop-down menu here, you have the name of the ARCHI object, right? And where I've done the mapping is in the documentation, you'll see BizBock policy and then a long description. You change this name, that name will change. So principal in ARCHI is the same as policy. Don't worry, you don't have to look at all those. Each object's one by one. I've mapped a summary table presented in later slides. Now, let's have a quick look at the analysis. So you'll notice here that this is the view, obviously, that the principal object is used in. And these are all of the relations that are going in and out. So you'll see those 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And they're the realization, and influences. And you'll see at a glance on any one of these objects, it'll do exactly that. Okay, so let's stick on that one. So we've seen our views, and you notice the 5 relationships. Now click on the visualizer and look at this. We have a different view with labels for each of the relationships in the meta model. This is the visualizer. Okay, now think of it like this. Facebook, friends of friends. So I have a friend, that friend has a friend, and we can go out to multiple levels of friends. Okay, so let's go to a depth of 2. Then you start to see the impact sideways on all of these. So you can click on any one, and it'll take you to 2 out. So we're basically surfing the whole knowledge base now. This is cross-mapping at its finest. So can you see how we create views and reuse objects, how knowledgeable we'll become? If you stick to the rules, you gain valuable insights. I pointed out the depth because we look at this in our 5 valuable viewpoints. Another point I wanted to make was hints. Okay, so if I click on any one of these, you get hints that come straight out of the specification. Principle represents a statement of intent during defining a general property that applies to any system in a certain context in the architecture. These are all corresponding, don't forget, these are all corresponding to the BizBock elements. Now let's talk about relationship mapping between BizBock and ARCHI. Now let's look at this relationships folder. You've noticed I've numbered those as per. Now at the top of the list, this is where we come up with our 36 different relationships inside the model. And you'll notice there's only 7 different types. So it's actually boiled it down quite well. If I click on that one, which is the top of the list, and I go into, here we go, main, and the name of it is aggregation. When the documentation says it accrues into, this is the mapping between the two. And again, don't worry about having to remember any of that. I have some slides that will show you a summary table. So now that we have the 2 models mapped together, I'll show you how to do all of this and use those 7 relationships to narrow down using our follow the mouse session using Power Query. The last 2 things I want to touch on is the palette over here and an export. So the palette, obviously, these are all of the objects that are available in the ARCHI specification that map to the BizBock specification. And what I'll be concentrating on through this is not only the business capabilities, but also we're going to look at some of the business objects. So you'll notice as soon as I hover over these, the hints will change. Okay, so I'm looking at business object. And then what we really want to do is we want to get to the place where we start to cross map applications, application components, and technology components, so we can answer that good old question. So we've got these capabilities. What applications and technologies are related to this capabilities? What are my operational impacts going to be? So with a few clicks, we've looked at folders, we've looked at views, which were basically the drawings, objects, properties, relationships, hints, a palette, mappings between them. Now, one last thing we want to talk about is exports. So if we go into File and we go into Export, you can export to a CSV and you can export to a model exchange file. So the model exchange file is an XML file, and it also has an XSD files that are descriptions of what's in the XML, and that'll basically draw up some folders. I'm not going to go into too much depth, but the other way you export is CSV files. Now, the CSV files basically take properties, relations, and objects and put them to 3 different CSV files. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take those and we're going to map those into Excel with Power Query to make a matrix. Okay, so there's 2 ways to export. And once you have this sort of little ETL happening, and you have Excel connected up to the CSV files, it makes it so much easier to do the analysis. The thing that I like really is the fact that you can do these drawings, query these drawings on the fly. So if I was to just query it and say principal, right, it'd show me all the places principal came up, right? What if I said actor, right? I can query it and away I go. And it shows me all the things that are happening for actor. Right, and so as your model grows, you start to see all of the impacts. So you can do that quite quickly, and you can draw quite quickly on the palette. And then you can do the export into Excel, and then you can do your queries, and you can get your sums, and you have your matrices of things. So we've had our lists of things, our matrices of things, our diagrams of things, and then we become the answer shop, right? Now, the other thing I'll say is you can also do imports. via CSVs. So the CSVs that I've downloaded for the course, you can also import those and you'll have this model. I've also given you the ARCHI the .ARCHI file, and all you have to do is go File, Open, and then you point to the ARCHI file and it'll bring it up into your version. That's another way to get it in if you have the whole file. Or you can also do an import from a model exchange file. I've also given you that model exchange file. But it means you have to have opened up a blank model. So you just go File, Open, a File New, blank model, and then you do the import and it'll import all of these things. So these two follow the mouse sessions are the dashboards we're going to use during the class. These dashboards are handy to have up and going as we follow the presentations. Don't forget, I do a see one, do one, teach one presentation. So make sure you do the downloads. They will come in handy, especially when we get to section 4, the 5 valuable viewpoints. Now let's look at the Excel cross-mapping matrix. This will make us the answer shop.